Morning, welcome to Real Build. We're going to talk about parts today, where to get parts. When you're just starting out, it's not something you probably had to do before, so you're going to be a little bit lost. And depending on what kind of vehicle you got, depends what kind of parts you're going to look for. And while we're going to get into all forms of getting parts from local and new and used, online, offline, we're going to start today with where to get parts locally. Now, there's no sponsorship of any kind in this discussion, but to give you an idea of some of the places to look. If you're in the United States, you got the big guns. You got the O'Reillys. You got the AutoZones. You've got the Pep Boys. And you've got the Napas. Every town's got one of the big ones. If you're in Canada, you can add in Bumper to Bumper, you can add in Canadian Tire. If you're in Europe, there's similar types of stores throughout. And they're the big places where you go for your average stuff. Doesn't work for every kind of car, because if you got a specialty car, it can be a pain. But for most of your day-to-day stuff, you can hit these major stores and get the bulk of the bits and pieces you need, and oil and fittings and things like that. But don't forget, every area has small parts stores as well. And these can sometimes be a better buy. They can get you a better value. They can get the parts. They may have them on the shelf. They're a great source of parts. For instance, when I'm building Japanese cars, I use a small independent shop in the closest city that gets me prices just as good as anywhere else. But most importantly, the guys behind the counter have the knowledge on what the best pieces and buys are. And that's the really big deal. Doesn't matter whether you're using one of the majors or an independent, you need to find a place where you're really comfortable dealing with the people behind the counter. You want people who understand what you're doing, especially when you're just starting out. They can give you a little bit of advice, and they can direct you to the best value in parts. And I want to talk about value for a minute. When you're buying, cheap is not always the best. It's not the best value. You can buy cheap brake pads, for instance, and 6 months later you're changing them again. That's not a good value. You're not saving any money. You want to get good quality parts for the best dollar spent. So often it's very worthwhile to spend a few extra dollars, especially on a project car or really on a high performance car that you're building, to get really good quality parts that are going to last and they're going to stand up. Not just cheap. So be very careful on that. Too many guys fall into that trap and they wind up redoing things far too often. So when you're buying locally, be sure, use the big guns. You can hit the major outlets, pick up your bits and pieces from most vehicles, and of course all your day-to-day stuff. But also remember those independent local shops. Sometimes the knowledge there is just phenomenal and the deals are great, so do shop around. Now if you have a specialty car like I do with my Triumph, you need to dig out and find the places that specialize in that stuff. Now every major center has 1 or 2 or 3 places that are specialty shops. And they're great because they can get you access to stuff locally, usually off the shelf, that you can't get anywhere else. So for instance with my Triumph, when I needed a clutch cylinder and I didn't want to order online and wait, I was able to drive in, pick it up, get it installed, and I was driving the same day because I had sought out the specialty shops. And they also have a lot of great advice specific to your vehicles. So be sure, again, shop around. The big key is you want to get the best value for the dollar, not just the cheapest price. You want good quality parts, and you want to find a place where you're really comfortable with the people you're dealing with behind the counter, that they've got some knowledge, they can direct you in the right place, they can give you some good advice. So it takes a little bit of work, and it's good to start on finding those places once you've decided on what kind of car you're going to get. Now the other place you're going to look, which is going to shock a lot of people, is don't forget when you're looking for something odd, check out the big hardware store chains, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, in Canada, the Home Hardwares and places like that. The number of times I've found neat little ducts or metallic hoses or cover plates for pennies on the dollar where I'd pay anywhere else that have allowed me to put together custom setups is pretty amazing. And it's surprising what they have in there. It's also a great place to shop for tools because their prices are usually a little better, even on the same product. And other bits and pieces and nicks and knacks and spray paints and stuff like that. So be sure to shop around. Remember, you've always got the big ones like the O'Reillys and the Napas and the Pep Boys and the AutoZones and the Bumper to Bumpers and the big stores like that. But look for those independent shops because they often get you the best deal and the best advice and most knowledge. Okay? And finally, look in places like the big chain stores for oddball bits and pieces that'll make your life easier, and always keep an eye open for really good buys on tools and disposables. In the long run, when you're buying things like oils and paints and cleaners and stuff like that, you can save a lot of money going to a big chain store once you know what you're looking for. So with those words of caution, start doing your homework. Depending on the car you've got, different places are going to work better, or more motorcycle for that matter, because we're going to be getting into one of those. And buy local wherever you can. When you support the local economy, a couple things happen. One, if you've got a problem, you got somebody you can go back to. It's not just freighting the part back and getting another one. Maybe it's something you did. Maybe it's a failure on the part. Maybe you got the wrong part, but you can rectify it quickly. Second is, it keeps the people in your area busy. And third, you're going to need those places down the road when you've got a problem and they've got a knowledge. So build a good relationship with your parts suppliers, be it a big store, an independent, specialty store. And when you're looking for stuff that's not that conventional, don't forget the hardware stores and the other specialty stores that can help you out. And that pretty much wraps up what you need to look at when you're buying locally. The next time we're going to talk on different segments of where to find parts, but all of it comes down to doing your homework before you start buying bits and pieces. That's it on where to get parts today, and we'll be digging more and more into this as we go along, so watch for further segments. Till then, take care and have a great day.